Uh, it is definitely not surprising. I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought this is the way ChatGPT was moving into. One thing I did read was they're not releasing ads for their entire segment. Right now, it is only for their free or even the basic, I think, the Go subscribers. So they're going to start with that. And it is only going to run in US first I'm thinking before they push it out everywhere. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so interested to see how it's going to change how people interact with ChatGPT. Like, I wonder if people will be more hesitant or jumping to other platforms or increase usage. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see.
Yes, I'm thinking as this only affects those basic or the free version and the basic version. If you're using like Pro or any kind of business account, this technically does not affect you. But even then, I definitely see more people going to Gemini at least. The growth of Gemini has been so fast, and I kind of feel like ChatGPT introducing ad will kind of push that more.
Yeah, agree. Gemini has definitely been picking up some speed as of late. So I agree with that sentiment. It'll be interesting to see if Gemini matches and kind of does something similar in the future as well.
Yes. One other interesting thing is earlier when you see ads on Google, it was like right on the top. Now you even see them on the middle of the pages. But even in Google, they used to be clearly labeled as ads. Like every single page that appears on an ad section will be labeled as ad. But Google has been sneakier where it will just say sponsored ads and it will give you a bunch of them together. But when I was reading this ChatGPT documentation, they did say that they will clearly label it as ad and they will separate it from organic responses. So once it rolls out, we will see. In the documentation, they give you a couple of images to show you how it will look like. But I think only once after it rolls out, we'll see how people react to it and how many people are switching platforms.
Yeah,
Do
totally.
we know exactly when that's starting?
They did say maybe end of January or around that time. I'm not sure if they had a specific time, but what we know for sure is it is only going to be for the US first.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. For all those that are joining, please let us know where you're zooming in from, what your title is, what company you work for, and what you're interested in learning. Let us know in the chat. Awesome. Phoenix. While you're all doing that, I'd like to welcome you to Winning AI Search, How Brands Appear, Rank, and Convert in 2026. We've got Iowa, Charlotte, Savannah, Long Island, Little Rock, Calgary. Oh, nothing but cakes. Toronto. Today we're breaking down how visibility really works when buyers rely on tools like ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, not just traditional rankings. You're in great hands with our speakers. First, we've got Kalina McKay, SVP of Owned Media at Go Fish Digital. She leads digital PR, SEO, email, and ORM, and has helped brands earn coverage in outlets like The Washington Post, Forbes, Business Insider, and Cosmopolitan. We also have Ashish Jacob or AJ. Excuse me. He's an SEO and GEO strategist here at GoFish. Ashish works across enterprise, SaaS, e-commerce, and GEO focused brands. He translates complex search and AI data into clear revenue focused guidance for executive teams. So let's get started.
Hello, welcome everyone. So let's see what we'll be learning in today's webinar. We'll be diving into a lot of things. We'll look into how AI search engines decide which brands get cited, what it takes to stay visible when search becomes a summary. We'll be looking into uh, retrieval augmented generation, vector embeddings. We'll be looking into query fan out. We'll be looking into how can you optimize a single page and then how can you semantically audit the entire website. We'll be looking into new workflows for GEO, and then we'll also be looking into how digital PR supports visibility across SEO and AI, and then why media mentions now shape whether AI includes your brand. So definitely a lot to cover today. Now we can start with our first poll. So are you currently optimizing your site for GEO? You must fall in one of these three buckets where you don't know where to even start from, or you're already optimizing your site, you're running multiple testing, but you're not measuring performance, or you're optimizing and you're tracking and you're completely got it. Usually, what we are seeing is that most of the people do fall on the first two buckets, but we'll see today.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've been doing these webinars for some time now, and I think people are like gradually more and more picking up more geo optimizations and tracking a little bit better. So I'm curious to see today how that kind of compares to past webinars that we've done.
Lena and AJ, for incoming clients, are you seeing that a lot of people are doing this, or have they not done it yet and that's why they're coming to you for help?
Yeah, I would say a lot of our clients coming in are coming to us for that exact reason, for a little bit of expertise and guidance. I think everybody agree, well, most people agree that it's really important and something that should be prioritized, but a lot of people are overwhelmed with where to start or maybe don't have the resources. So, yeah, I don't know, AJ, if you agree.
Exactly the same boat. A bunch of clients that we are getting, they definitely have heard the term geo, but they're not sure where to start with. And then we do have some clients who have a better understanding, but they don't know how to track it or what strategies to even start from. And that is where we come in to help.
Yeah, understandable. Think we can or we can share the results of the poll. Great.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like there's pretty well divided group kind of across all the different categories. So yeah, we'll definitely get into a lot of these things and hopefully give you guys some more guidance on how to optimize.
This is actually interesting. Again, the poll kind of shows us that right now everyone is in all three of the buckets. Usually, like I said, when we have done this in the past, it was focused on the first and second. But right now in today's poll, we see a lot of that has shifted to the third bucket as well. So this is interesting. Okay, so let's get into this. Search is no longer a list of blue links. It has become a summary. And what we are seeing right now, it is a fundamental shift. We are technically moving from Google-shaped web into an agent-shaped web. And these agents, they don't read pages the way humans do. They're not going from top to bottom. What they're doing is that they're extracting information, they're reasoning over it, then they recombine it to give you a final answer. So when that happens, what we are seeing, right? One thing that we are seeing is, excuse me, click-through rates drop sharply by as much as 61% because the answer is delivered directly on the results page. The metrics that you see on the slide that was specific for AI overviews, and I have personally seen that with a lot of our clients as well, where if you are covering a lot of top of funnel content, the traffic is being taken by AI overviews. All this to say, if your brand isn't in one of the sources that AI pulls into that response, you are not just losing a click anymore. For that user, you effectively don't exist. Now let's look into some data because it tells us a very clear story where the audience has gone. We are not talking about early adopters anymore, especially with the poll that we just saw. So ChatGPT is generating nearly 5.6 billion visits per month with over 2.5 billion prompts sent every single day. And Google Gemini has already crossed 650 million monthly users. But the number that pulls all of this into perspective is the one at the bottom, where it says 58% of Google searches now end with 0 clicks. That number specifically creates a completely new dynamic. And if the user isn't clicking through to your site, the battle is no longer about traffic, it is about inclusion. Now look into the three important tactics for appearing in LLMs. We are going to dive into all three of them. The good news here is you don't need to start from scratch. If you already have a solid SEO foundation, you're actually in a really good place. And this isn't about reinventing the wheel. It is about taking what you already have and then adapting it so AI systems can clearly understand it, trust it, and reuse it. The second piece is digital PR. In an AI-driven world, links by themselves aren't good anymore or enough anymore. What really matters is co-citation. And these AI systems trust a small set of high authority sources like Wikipedia, major media outlets, and industry review sites. And when your brand shows up alongside your competitors in those trusted spaces, it sends a strong credibility signal. And finally, let's not ignore traditional PR. Real world coverage is what feeds Google's knowledge graph. And if a product launches and no one in the media talks about it, the AI has nothing to validate against. So traditional PR gives the AI that third party confirmation it needs to trust that your brand is real. I'll be speaking on the first part where Kalina will be taking over the second and the third part that I mentioned here. So, what is GEO and why does it matter? Generative Engine Optimization or GEO. It is about optimizing for LLMs. So AI engines like ChatGPT and Gemini understand, trust, and recommend your brand, not just find it. Traditional SEO was about ranking links in search results, whereas GEO is about becoming the source AI systems rely on when generating answers. One thing worth understanding is what actually happens when you type a query into systems like ChatGPT or Gemini. So again, you open one of these AI systems, and after you type in a question, and if that question requires an up-to-date or verifiable information, these systems don't just guess. What they do is something called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So RAG allows the AI to take live external information at the moment the question is asked and ground its response in real sources rather than relying only on its training data, which can be limited. Later on the slides, you will see how ChatGPT does it. So when you enter a question, if the answer is already in the pre-trained data, ChatGPT won't do RAG. It will directly just give you the answer. But if it has to go fetch answer from search, you will see a small snippet where it says searching the web. And once you enter the question, the RAG process happens. And as part of that process, AI also enters a rethink step called query fanout. This is where a single user prompt is broken into smaller, more specific subqueries, and each of those searches looks at the topic from a different angle. So maybe definition, comparisons, edge cases, credibility checks. So the reason it does it, so it can validate facts and build a reliable answer before responding to your question. Also, recently, Chris Long did a research across 8,000 unique prompts, and he found that 95% of the fan out queries generated by those unique prompts have zero visible search volume in traditional SEO tools. That is actually surprising. Imagine taking 8,000 prompts and then analyzing all the query fan out. You find out that 95% of them have zero MSV. That is one of the limitations with our traditional SEO tools as well. Um, Also, one other big things that he mentioned was that ChatGPT is relatively conservative. So when you enter a single prompt, it just runs around two parallel searches for every prompt you enter. But Gemini is much more aggressive. So when you ask a single question, it is running nine or more fan out queries for every single question. Okay, so why do some brands show up while others disappear? This is a slide I'm actually going to geek out a little bit on, and then I'm going to simplify it a bit also. So it's actually pretty simple. It comes down to a fundamental shift in how AI systems read and understand content. We have moved away from traditional lexical search where relevance was based on matching exact keywords. Instead, search now works on a hybrid model where a vector search plays a major role. And in simple terms, that means AI isn't just reading words anymore, it's interpreting meaning. And how does it actually do that? So to interpret meaning, the AI converts language into numerical representations called vector embeddings and positions them within a high dimensional semantic space. We are talking about a space with 768 dimensions. And in that space, Apple the fruit and Apple the iPhone are far apart because the surrounding context signals that they represent different concepts even though they are spelled the exact same. Once everything lives in that semantic space, the next question becomes how does the AI decide what matters most? This is where another technical term, cosine similarity, comes in. You can think of it as AI's GPS. It measures the mathematical angle between the user's question and your content's embedding. So if your content is too broad or unfocused, it ends up further away in that space. And for you to rank and be cited, your content needs to be one of the closest semantic matches to the user's specific question and intent. And if all of this sounded like technical jargon, here's the simple version. So instead of matching keywords, The AI turns a user's question into a set of numbers that represent its meaning. It compares those numbers against its database. It finds the content that is mathematically closest to that intent. It pulls the most relevant chunks and then combines into one clear, cohesive answer. The next piece of this is atomic content, or what we usually call chunking. Chunking is how AI breaks content into small standalone pieces so it can understand it, retrieve it, and reuse it. And as I mentioned in the previous slides, AI agents don't read pages line by line the way we do. Instead, they are scanning the page and extracting specific sections. And because of that, every section needs to be clear, focused, and able to stand on its own. Here at GoFish, we did run an experiment. We have a couple of in-house internal tools where when we optimize a page, if a specific section is covering too many different topics, we see the score that the internal tool gives the specific section is less. But if you break it down, you make it distinct, and then you rerun the tool, we have seen the specific score of that section increase. I'll speak more on that later as well. Next, consensus determines trust. So, even if your content is clear and well structured, that's still not enough on its own. AI also validates that what you say by checking the wider web. It looks for agreement across trusted third party sources like industry publications, reviews, and forums. And the last piece here is reputation. Visibility is no longer just about being mentioned, it's about how your brand is described. AI systems, they're analyzing sentiments from real user discussions across platforms like GU, Reddit, forums, and review sites to understand your role in the market. So the language people are using in those conversations, in those platforms, it effectively becomes your brand's profile, and you're included when that reputation aligns with what the user is asking for, and you're excluded when there's a mismatch. A simple example would be if someone asks for maybe a SaaS software which is cheap, and if your brand is mentioned as pricier in all these review sites, Reddit, everywhere, AI is not going to pull that answer based on that sentiment. So, how do we know which prompts the AI is actually searching for? The good news here is you don't have to guess. In many cases, you can see them directly. I did speak about this a little bit earlier when I mentioned about RAG, but in ChatGPT, when you type in a question, and you can see that on the screenshot where it says searching the web, that is when we know the RAG process has started. It is not giving the answer from the pre-trained memory, but it is doing a search. It is using external sites to find the answer. So when that happens, it then again it will give you some more queries like the second screenshot where it says searching for best portable air conditioner. So you will see that you entered a question, but then it breaks that into more specific questions. So that is one way to figure out what are the additional prompts ChatGPT is looking into. The other way to do the same thing is, which is a little bit more reliable. While you're in ChatGPT, you're doing a live search. You can click on the right button and then you can go to inspect. And then from there, you can click on network and then you can select the fetch/XHR. And there you will see some conversation files, and this will only happen when you type in a question and ChatGPT does the live search, and then you will see the conversation file. Or once you click on it, this is what you see. You will see the multiple other queries that it ran. So this is also one of the way, but if you don't want to deal with any of this, you want to make it more simpler, there are Chrome extensions like Query Fan Out Inspector. Um, I have used that one. That is pretty reliable. It kind of also shows you what all query fan outs happen when one original query is entered. Okay, so now let's talk about how to structure content so AI systems can actually use it. AI models prefer content that's easy to process, so making sure your content has clear headings, lists, and tables. FAQs also tend to perform better than long, dense paragraphs because, again, they make the information easier for the AI to extract. Another interesting thing, and this is something I learned recently, but we have to rethink about meta description. While Google does not use them as a direct ranking factor, and many of times we ignore it, they are critical for AI optimization. So AI uses your description as a filter to decide if your page is worth reading. So if your description is vague, AI will simply skip your content. But then the natural question is, how do you know if something is actually working? Like you can go within your page, you can make changes to some sections, you can add table, you can add list, you can add FAQ, but how do you know that if any changes that you worked, if going to be successful, or do you have to wait after you publish it? And that is where I mentioned at GoFish, we use an internal extension called page similarity that lets you enter a target keyword or prompt, and then it kind of shows us how different sections on that particular page aligns to the intent using similarity scoring. So if a score is like closer to 10, we know it's that much more aligned to the initial query or the initial keyword. It also gives you a whole page similarity as well. The other thing it does, it makes sure that, hey, this part of the content needs to be tightened and or rewritten, or then other sections say these are already good, we can keep them as that is. Okay, so this is another slide we're going to spend a little bit more time on. So what are the new workflows for GEO success? First, we start with the technical foundation. This is basically a visibility check. So if the AI can't access your content, nothing else matters. That means making sure the AI bots aren't blocked in robots.txt, your content isn't hidden behind JavaScript, and your site responds fast enough. So these are the couple of things that we have to start with, because if you're blocking the bots, then again, there's no way they're able to take that information. One thing that we have seen is that we have clients who do block training bots, but they allow the search bots. So that way you're able to save your data. You're not giving the data to these AIs for free. So that is one thing that we have seen. The other thing, again, this is also something I read recently. It is important for your site to respond fast enough, because when these AIs they're asking for your site in the backend, if your site is slow to respond, it will just give up and it will just move on. The other thing is schema also helps reduce confusion by making the data easier for AI to understand. The only caveat is there's definitely a lot of debate around schema, like good and bad, but I will leave that part for you to decide. Next comes a prompt mapping. But here we flip the script. We don't start with keywords, we start with the user. Like, who are they? And what are they trying to do across the user journey? From learning to comparing to validating to deciding. From there, we map those journeys to prompts, and we identify the fan out questions that AI is asking behind the scenes. If your site doesn't answer those sub questions, you can create content for those specific queries to cover them. But if your site already answers them and it is outdated, we recommend optimizing it, because freshness is also something AI pays close attention to. Let me add one more thing here. If one question comes to your mind, which is, if the fan arts are always changing, how can we make sure that we are optimizing the right questions? One thing that you can do is, again, it may be a manual process. You can also do, I believe, using Gemini API. But one of the manual things that you can do for the most important questions of prompts of your site, like list them out, run couple of them multiple times a day for maybe a week or so, and then you can look at all the different variations, and after you have a bunch of variations throughout the week or two, you can see which queries were the ones that were always called or mostly called. So that also kind of helps you knowing that, hey, for every query thing this question was ran on, these were specifically called. So that is one thing you can do. Next, you have to own your narrative. If you don't clearly explain how you compare to competitors or what makes you different, the AI is going to pull that context from places like Reddit or G2. So you can create comparison pages and also expert driven explanation. And by doing this, you are now controlling how AI describes your brand and visibility, instead of leaving it to those third party opinions or sites that I mentioned. Again, all of this starts with cleaning your own house. You have to make sure the messaging across your homepage, your about page, your leadership page is also consistent. You cannot have multiple sections of the page saying different things. And from there, now it's about building real topical authority. So not surface level content, but deep coverage across the entire journey, built through intentional topic clusters that cover related questions and use cases. And when these AI systems see consistent, comprehensive answers across the whole connected prompts, the user journey, they will start treating your brand as a reliable source. Now the last point. Okay, so now let's talk about tracking. We usually get a lot of questions on what to track, how can we track if these prompts are changing. There are a couple of metrics that we focus. One is prompt level visibility, share of voice, sentiment analysis, and then which brands are actually being cited. At GoFish, we use Profound. It helps us with tracking all of those metrics I just mentioned. It helps us measure that. The second thing that we really are heavy on here is log file analysis. It is really important because it kind of shows us that what AI crawlers are accessing the pages in our site, which pages are important, are there any technical issues causing them to leave. So we are able to look into that as well. So using Profound and also log file analysis kind of gives us a clear picture of geo performance. I'm sure there are also some free tools and then some manual methods you can do as well, but these are the ones that we primarily use here. Okay, so how long does geo actually take? We have seen AI result change within hours because these systems prioritize freshness and pull data in real time. They surface the most up-to-date answers. In one of the tests that we did, there was a content gap within our page and we were not appearing in AI overviews. So after re-optimizing that page for that specific content gap, the page showed up in AI overviews within 3 hours. So after the page was indexed. So that was pretty fast. We know we can measure the semantic relevance of a single page using tools like the page similarity extension that I went over earlier. But the billion-dollar question is, does the AI trust your entire domain? And how can you measure the semantics of an entire website? Here at GoFish, we do use a process called semantic content audit within our Barracuda tool. Okay, so what does this tool actually does and what's our process at GoFish here? So it takes into consideration all your indexable pages and it shows whether the AI sees your site as a true expert in a topic. It will identify content that drifts away from your core themes. It will flag duplicate pages that split authority. It will cluster content to reveal gaps in coverage. It also highlights which pages are the strongest, which one needs optimization, which pages are hurting overall topic authority. So you know exactly like what to update, what to consolidate or remove. One of the tests I remember when we did this for a client, there was a huge chunk of content that they had that was moving the semantic center that you see on the right side of the graph a little bit to where they did not want it to be. And for some reason, the crawlers were thinking that they're expert on something they were not. And we recommended them to remove that entire content. So we pruned the entire content. And after that, what we saw, the semantic center increased and the pages started ranking better. The traffic increased. They were more mentioned in the AI platforms. So we were able to verify it with data within a tool as well. But the good thing is the after you do all of this, the result is like a clear roadmap, which you can use to improve topical authority and also make sure that your content is cited. Okay, so let's do another poll. This one's important. It's a quick check to see if you want a free AI visibility audit that shows where your brand appears in AI answers and where you're missing out.
Yeah, and as part of this audit, we'll dig a little bit deeper into your site and identify opportunities for you. You'll get the chance to meet with someone from our team to kind of give you some quick wins and how we can improve things. Totally free. So feel free to respond. We'll kind of leave this one up for you guys to drop your answers in and we can keep rolling.
Okay, so we covered a lot today. We looked into what geo is, why it matters, how answers are selected. We looked into RAG, vector embeddings, how to format content, and how workflows are changing. Now let's talk about what's next. You may have seen these recent updates. Google has launched agentic commerce. So now that means users can now buy products directly within Google search and both in AI mode and Gemini. Google is also like opening up deeper personalization by connecting to things like Gmail and calendar, which makes context and personalization even more important than ever. So that's a big change that we have seen. On the ChatGPT side, we are seeing similar shift. There's instant checkout now powered by their agentic commerce protocol. So users can shop directly inside ChatGPT without leaving the platform. And right in the beginning of this webinar, we were talking about ChatGPT introducing ads. So every single day, we do see a lot of changes happening quickly. But more importantly, there's still a big opportunity here for brands that start optimizing early instead of waiting. So I want to end here because this is really the risk, and then I'll pass it to Helena. So the risk isn't that SEO suddenly stops working; it's that search itself is changing, and brands that don't adapt slowly become invisible in the places where people are actually getting the answers. And the competitors who are already optimizing for AI, they aren't waiting. They are getting cited, they are being summarized, and they are recommended, while everyone else is still focused on, again, the blue links. And that's really the takeaway. This isn't about chasing trends. It's about making sure your brand still shows up when people are asking questions, making decisions, and ready to act.
Yeah. Agreed. Thanks, AJ. That was great. I'm going to dive in a little bit more to the off-page side of things. We're going to talk about media mentions, how you should think about them as part of your larger digital strategy, and then how you can officially earn them in an increasingly challenging media environment. So we'll start with a little bit of a step back. It's probably no surprise that the value of backlinks is a very highly debated topic in the SEO industry. If you do just a quick few Google searches, you'll find a lot of different information and a lot of different conflicting opinions. There was a time in which most people agreed that backlinks were like the top ranking factor for online visibility. But since then, there's been statements released by Google saying that backlinks do matter, they don't matter, they only matter if they're relevant. It's gone back and forth and changed a lot. So these conflicting narratives have naturally caused a little bit of confusion and discourse, and it's hard to know exactly what to believe. So if you fall into that category, I don't blame you, but I'm going to show you some examples and share some data that'll hopefully bring some clarity to this. First, I just want to kind of get a pulse check. Are you prioritizing backlink building in your PR and SEO strategies? Are you considering media mentions as part of your generative engine optimization strategies? Just curious to see where the crowd here stands. AJ, what have you seen with your clients when it comes to backlinks?
I definitely seen a mixed where some people are still in the myth where they don't believe it, but at the same time, there are still I've seen clients who really want to prioritize it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Same. Cool. And yeah, it looks similar from these poll results. We see a lot of some, but it's not a priority, or we don't prioritize it at all. So yeah, we'll definitely dig into that a little bit more throughout. But the reality of it is that the value of links has changed. In the 2010s and before, SEO was much more of a numbers game. You could almost manipulate your site's rankings just simply by having the highest quantity of backlinks, and it didn't really matter where those links came from, which of course led to a lot of like black hat tactics, including buying links and doing essentially whatever you could do to boost your numbers. But Google caught on to that fairly quickly. And then with the Penguin update in 2012, introduced penalties to sites participating in link schemes, coined the term toxic backlinks, and over time continued to get smarter and smarter at detecting paid links, which has led to this overall shift in the industry from buying links to earning them through PR-based tactics. Along the way, we saw other things like the rise of disavowing links, the real-time evaluation of links, and even harsher penalties. All the while, links still matter and they're still important for ranking, which led people to focus on the types of links that they were building rather than the sheer volume alone. That brings us all the way up to the present, where AI is starting to take over search. And now not only do links matter, but so do brand mentions, as AJ kind of alluded to. The relevancy and the authority of sites that are covering you is really critical, which is why it's a good idea to target media outlets that cover a wide breadth of different topics and different industries. And we'll continue to dig into this throughout this presentation. But the point here is that there's been this major shift from quantity alone to quality and relevancy of backlinks that your site builds. So links are not just for search engines, they also influence AI. To talk a little bit more about this, there's essentially two key ways that you can think about how links and media mentions influence AI visibility. One of them on the left here is this concept of brand co-citations, which is incredibly important for training LLMs on who you are and what you do as a business. So if you're getting mentions in these major media publications that reference your core offerings, you're essentially associating yourself with your business. So you can see here in this example, a travel rewards company, the whole story is not necessarily about upgraded points, but you can see that link and that connection, which helps explain to journalists what upgraded points is and why they're talking about them. The second piece of this is that OpenAI has a lot of different contracts with a ton of different media publications for accessing information and using them then as sources in their responses. So this includes groups like Hearst, which owns Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, Men's Health, Dotdash, which owns People, Better Homes and Gardens, The Spruce. There's a ton of these different media groups that kind of own this kind of space that aren't featured on this slide. So this is why it's really important to prioritize media outlets in your outreach strategies and not just focus on building links and mentions from sites that are hyper relevant to your specific niche and industry. Because OpenAI has legal access and licensing rights to these sites, these publications are essentially whitelisted for use in their models, which means that stories and content can appear directly in ChatGPT outlets. So if you're being talked about in these publications, that content is then more likely to train or influence ChatGPT's understanding of you and your overall industry expertise, which then in turn increases the odds of ChatGPT referencing your brand or your site when serving responses to users. So media coverage is obviously a critical factor for both rankings and AIOs. As I promised, here's some data. So these two graphs are from Ahrefs. They show key factors that correlate with rankings in both traditional SERPs and then also AI overviews. On the left here, you can see the graph that analyzed the number of backlinks for sites ranking in positions across thousands of different keywords. And those in position one clearly had the most backlinks by a really wide margin. Of course, there's a lot of bias and extraneous factors going into this study because sites that are ranking number one are naturally going to be a little bit more authoritative. But it is a good indicator that links are certainly still a very positive ranking factor for moving up in the SERPs. On the right, you can see that Ahrefs analyzed 4,300 branded websites across 100,000 different keywords. They looked at which brands were mentioned in AI overviews and then correlated that with a ton of different SEO metrics, things like backlinks, domain rating, search volume, brand mentions. And the strongest correlation of all of those is how often a brand is mentioned on the web, even without a backlink. So that goes back to the point of how LLMs are prioritizing visibility in natural language across the internet. So the main takeaway here is that brand mentions matter for AI overviews just as much, if not more, than links themselves. So it's really important to prioritize a backlink building strategy and outreach strategy that's intentional, strategic, and going to hit the best of both worlds when it comes to both mentions and links. So you can win both in the traditional SERPs and also in AI search at the same time. So how do you do this? One of the hardest parts is finding that golden opportunity of what to pitch a journalist. Journalists get dozens, if not hundreds of pitches every single day. And standing out is really key to really get that coverage that we're going to earn for these publications. So we use a concept called digital PR, which is really different from other PR or backlink building techniques like cold outreach or guest posting or buying links. This is really different from all of that. The output is different in that we're prioritizing earned quality coverage from media publications. That means the strategy and the approach also has to be very, very different to achieve that goal. Earning high quality coverage requires a lot of upfront planning in terms of content creation. It uses public relations strategies to achieve SEO based goals. So the way that we do this is this concept called tangential content, which is essentially content that's related to, but not necessarily directly about your brand or service, but instead has like 1 degree of separation from your primary product, your primary revenue driver. We've talked to a lot of journalists. We've heard firsthand that they don't want to cover things that sound like an ad. And in fact, they can make a lot of money from sponsored content or advertorials and things of that nature. So I'll give you an example. If you're a fashion boutique, an example of branded content would be a piece of content around the most popular shirts. You probably sell shirts, and in that listicle of the most popular shirts, it could be shirts that you actually sell and people can buy directly from that specific article. Tangential content would be something about the most popular colors in 2026. Colors are really critical when you're deciding what shirts to buy, and a fashion boutique should know a thing or two about trending colors. But journalists are not going to see that as a red flag because it's not overly promotional of specific products. We've done a lot of research and studies on our specific content, and we've found that things that fall in this tangential spot earn around triple the number of backlinks than those that are closely related to the clients of brands. And that's across hundreds of different campaigns across a lot of different industries. And that's not to say that there's not a space for branded content. There still is, if that's your goal. You can just kind of expect a lower quantity of coverage, especially when we're talking about that high authority coverage. The caveat to all of this is that it should always make sense to come from your brand. Something like going back to that fashion example, if we were to promote something like the most popular soup coming from a fashion boutique, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's going to be really hard to explain to a journalist. So you don't want to go too far into that like unrelated space. You really want to toe the line of tangential content. You can get creative with your connections, but you should always be ready to answer the question of why did your company do this study? The second piece to this is data-driven content. So in addition to identifying the perfect topic, you have to figure out what you're going to essentially offer the journalist to entice them to cover and then refer back to you as a source because we're not paying. This is truly organic earned coverage. And one surefire way to do that is to produce a data story with unique insights to help accompany the stories that they may already be writing. So there's some examples on the screen: hospital emergency room visits over time, statistics around education debt, the cost of flying by day of the week. There's data literally everywhere if you look for it. Everything from, when you think about data, you might think of sites like Census, BLS, all the way to consumer sites like Yelp, Airbnb, Zillow can have a lot of different data points that you can scrape and pull together a really interesting, unique story. Data can come in a lot of different forms. If you can't find the perfect source, which that happens pretty regularly, you can also create data through a survey. So you can craft questions, poll people, pull key insights, and then create a data set that's like proprietary information that you can't find anywhere else. But all of this is almost like giving your journalists an out to say, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a study that said XYZ, and here's all the methodology information. The next piece is a creative element to kind of tie your campaign together. It's really beneficial to add some kind of visual element. So this helps condense your key insights so reporters can quickly understand what you're trying to communicate, whether that's an insight visualized in a donut chart or a city plotted on a map. Graphics can really help bring a story to life and make your story really easy to understand in just a matter of seconds. You can also compile all of your insights on a landing page or something similar so that reporters have this kind of like one-stop shop where they can get all the information about the study. So if they have a question about methodology, sources, when was this conducted, how many people did you survey, literally any question they might have should be answered on this single page. This also then creates a page that the journalist can then link back to when they're referencing the study, and gives you more opportunity for that SEO lift. And then finding journalists. So on top of figuring out what you're going to pitch, you also need to figure out who you're going to pitch. The content piece is huge, but then what you do with that content is just as, if not more important. I recommend doing this exercise in tandem with your concept development. So as you're thinking about potential ideas, right away start to think about the broad types of journalists you would pitch to. So with every single campaign, you want to have multiple different angles and multiple different types of people. For instance, with one single campaign, you might be pitching national general interest reporters. You might be pitching career business outlets and then also local outlets, all with the same story, just tailored, targeted pitches with different insights. You need to make sure that those targets make sense. You wouldn't want to pitch, for instance, a beauty story to a finance writer unless you had some kind of really strong cost angle that really made sense for them. But the more areas you can tap into, the more different opportunities for coverage, the more backup plans you essentially create for yourself. And then once you have those general guardrails of types of publications that you want to pitch, do just a little bit more research into the individuals at each specific outlet to determine who's the best fit to pitch. There's hundreds of writers for every outlet, so do your due diligence to find the ones that make sense. If you're pitching something, for instance, about going into debt for makeup and you want to find a fluffier lifestyle reporter at a finance outlet rather than one that's covering like stocks or larger economic trends. So you can look at the types of content that reporters are covering. You can look at the format of their stories. So for instance, if you're pitching a survey, maybe look for reporters at that outlet that have covered surveys in the past. And there's a ton of different media databases and tools that can help speed up this process. But you can also manually find journalists and their contact information just by searching relevant keywords, Google News. A lot of journalists list their email address directly in their stories, in their bios, in their social media. So be a little bit scrappy and find areas to find contact information. And journalists really want to receive pitches. So as long as they're relevant to their coverage area, don't be afraid to reach out. So I got an example of this in action. Once you kind of put all of these steps together, what does it look like? This is an example that we did for Simple Texting, which is an SMS marketing company. We did the best US cities for hybrid work. We scraped LinkedIn for the number of job listings that include a hybrid work environment. We included salary ranges of those roles and more. We tied it back loosely to their overall connection and authority in the business space. And then once we had that data, we compiled it into a ranking of major cities across the US and mapped it out into this digestible infographic. So that gave us the ability to now not only pitch nationally, but also locally across the US with specific insights relevant to their target audience. So opened up outreach pool exponentially and gave us even more opportunities for media coverage and backlinks. And it paid off because this campaign resulted in a total of 32 pieces of coverage with an average domain rating of 61. It got covered in MSN, CNBC, NBC, The Street, Go Banking Rates, and more. And you can see here a variety of different ways that the story was covered by these outlets and how simple texting was talked about by them in these specific outlets and media publications. So wrapping up here, I briefly want to touch on a few recommendations for measuring and framing success, as it's somewhat of an abstract concept that can be really hard to track. So my general recommendation is the more you track, the more data you have, which means the more insights you'll have to inform and shape the future of your campaigns. So baseline, you should obviously be tracking the number of publications that mention you with every single campaign that you run. It's important to track this on an ongoing basis, not just initially when you're pitching, launching, and promoting the campaign, because one of the great things about this strategy is that your campaigns can continue to build links for months or even years to come as long as they live on your site. So I recommend checking back in on this periodically to capture any new links that you might have missed. You can also look at characteristics about those links, at minimum something about quality, so either domain rating from Ahrefs or domain authority from Moz, to give you some kind of insight into the overall authority of the site and its ultimate value of those backlinks. And then that being said, don't write off anything just because it's a low DR or DA site, especially if it's relevant to you in a new referring domain. It can still be super valuable to your backlink profile. Speaking of your backlink profile, you should also holistically track things like the number of referring domains. That's a really great way of measuring how your campaigns are performing all together. And then something like domain rating or domain authority on a regular basis, which is an indicator of your own personal authority, which will ultimately translate in your ability to rank on the traditional SERPs. So to illustrate what this can look like, I want to go back to simple texting, which we shared previously. We've worked with them for several years and have seen some really strong domain results. Over the course of 6 years, we've executed over 20 campaigns, and you can see that the number of referring domains increased by more than 5 times from under 1,000 to about 6,400. And their domain rating has jumped 10 points from 70 to 80, which is significant as they were already pretty strong when they started with us. And the higher your domain rating gets, the harder it is to move. That authority translated to a 300% increase in keywords rankings in positions 1 through 3. And obviously, we can't credit all of that success to digital PR. That also requires a really strong SEO strategy for optimal results. Essentially, when everything's working together in synergy, the more dramatic results you'll see at a faster pace. And that doesn't stop at traditional rankings, of course. With the coverage we're building over time, we're not only building link equity, but also increasing simple texting's overall authority and earning mentions, linking them back to this concept of SMS marketing. So now when you search for things like SMS marketing platforms, simple texting is being pulled into those recommendations, first by this AI overview, and then third on the ChatGPT prompt list. And again, those geo strategies that AJ mentioned throughout the call are playing a major role in this. But I want to highlight here is that the strategy can tie back to your priority products and services, ultimately will help you increase your conversions and revenue with a sustained, consistent strategy. We've done a lot of testing on this with our own site, and we have seen that the leads coming in from ChatGPT are converting at a much faster rate, and they're more qualified leads. So this is definitely a successful strategy that can work really well. So we wanted to throw this out one more time. If you want a free AI visibility audit, essentially, like I said, we'll just give you some behind the scenes into some of our proprietary tools, things like the similarity extension and Barracuda that AJ mentioned earlier are tools that we've developed, and we can kind of show you how those can work for you and your brand. So be sure to let us know if you're interested in that free audit. And then otherwise...
Thanks, both of you. I just wanted to point out that we did get a question in from Manny, and I know it's Q&A time. Um, He asked, are product descriptions most important now? AJ, that was for you while you were speaking.
Yes, I did see that question. Product descriptions are definitely important, but at that time, what I was referring to was meta descriptions. So we know Google does not look at does not give the importance to meta description as it used to. But when it comes to AI, when the AI crawlers they call a page, they're looking at few particular things and they're looking at meta description. So they're looking at meta description to see what the page is really about, and based on that, then they're saying that hey, should we go dig in deeper. So meta descriptions are more important now than ever, and also other things like titles, URL, and even your publish date. And if you have an update date, that's even more important because, like I mentioned, freshness is also something these AIs value a lot.
Thanks, AJ. We've got another question. Um, what are some signs you see that a brand is starting to lose ground in AI search?
Some signs are definitely one of the slides I went right in the beginning was just the presence of AI overviews. You see a drop of around 61%. I have seen that with my clients as well. So if your strategy is not around capturing the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel, again, it may seem that because AI overviews and all of these LLMs, they take care of the top of the funnel questions and you don't have to do anything. You still have to create strategy so that, and the reason for that is when a user asks a question and they see your brand multiple times in these AI overviews, trust is built. So you still have to do it. Definitely now it's not the game of traffic, as I mentioned, it's about being included. So brand is losing ground in terms of traffic, but what about inclusion? So build your strategies around that.
Awesome. Thank you. We've got another question in the chat from Andrew Gordon. Does the LLM crawl your site? How do they see you?
One thing it does, earlier again, there was like llm.txt file that was getting a lot famous and a lot of push, but uh, it is not as important as we think. So one thing it does again, all these crawlers in the backend, they will look at your site, and the first thing it will look into the robot.txt as well. So if you haven't blocked any of the important pages, like I mentioned, one of our client, they blocked the GPT training bots, but they allow the GPT search. So the GPT bots are not allowed to train on their website, but they are allowed to search and reference them when a user asks a question. So how do they crawl it? Again, they crawl your site if you allow them to.
Thank you. Kalina, it looks like we've got a question from Emily. With backlinks being very relevant with AI, should we still be diligent about going in and disavowing harmful backlinks?
Yes, I would say yes, it's still an important part of your strategy, but it's also very important to focus on the new quality good links coming in. I think to some extent, there's always going to be some level of harmful backlinks or not the best spammy looking backlinks, which kind of makes your backlink profile look a little bit natural, especially if you have a lot of different backlinks. Though that being said, I do still think that it is important to go through and make sure your backlink profile is as clean as you want it to be.
Thank you. We've got another question for Kalina for digital PR. Do LLMs take into account no follow links? We're in an industry where a lot of our industry publications that our PR team pursues follow a no follow practice, which I believe is hurting our backlink strategy.
Yeah, I love this question because I think for so long, no follow links were really devastating and really disappointing when you got a no follow link. I don't think that they were ever harmful. They just weren't as valuable as they could have been. So it's always disappointing to get a Forbes link and then you find out it's no follow. That being said, one good thing about AI is they're not really necessarily looking at the links as much as they are looking at co-citations. So it doesn't really matter if it's follow or no follow. So good news is that these no follow links are still super beneficial from an AI LLM perspective, just as much, if not more, than like traditional backlinks because it matters more what the actual media publication is saying and what that surrounding context is.
Thanks. We've got another question. I think this is for you, AJ. Do you know how much these performance drop-offs vary by industry? It's kind of a tough.
I so I actually don't have the numbers with me right now, but what I can tell you is that there is an article that Chris Long published recently where I was talking about all the 8,000 different prompts that he was researching. In that article, I believe it's an article or a webinar. You can see where he mentions a specific industry and where the drop off that we usually see with the presence of AI overviews and all.
Great. Another question. How do I know if our PR is actually helping the business?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the metrics that both I shared and also that AJ shared on just general AI visibility are really important. Just figuring out how often you're being referenced in prompts on key AI platforms, also AI overviews, various different areas like that. I also think your traditional metrics like domain rating, referring domains are also still important to track from that traditional SERP perspective. So I'd say like everything that you would typically track from a digital marketing perspective and then some will help kind of educate you on where you're standing from a PR perspective and a brand authority perspective.
Here's a follow-up question. How long does it really take before PR starts showing up in AI?
Great question. Yeah, similar to how AJ kind of shared that example, it can happen in hours, if not quicker than that. But in terms of like overall domain level impact, it is going to take a really long time, oftentimes several months, to see sustained effects of your PR strategies. Though one specific piece of coverage can come through pretty instantly on LLMs.
Awesome. And then last question. What kind of media mentions matter now?
Yeah, I think the media mentions from, like I said, those authoritative sites are very important. The ones that I had on the screen that have those partnerships with OpenAI are great. Also, ones that are in spaces relevant to your industry. And then within those specific media mentions, it's ideal if you can have a piece that really talks about you and your specific product, your specific offering. If you have that kind of like paraphrase around the mention, it kind of helps educate the LLM on who you are, what you do, like I said. So having that context surrounding the specific mention is really, really helpful to help increase your likelihood of being pulled into LLMs.
Uh, Thanks. Looks like we got another question. Any recommendations how to measure brand sentiment towards brand visibility performance?
Yeah. AJ, do you want to take that one? You want me to?
Yes. So excuse me. Like I mentioned before, we use Profound, and Profound kind of tells us sentiment analysis. So it kind of shows us for the prompts that we are tracking what kind of answers are people giving and what kind of sentiment is around that.
Thanks, AJ. Oh, did we get another one? No. Looks like that's all of the questions. So I want to thank you, Kalina and AJ. Great presentation. Thanks for everyone who joined. If you have more interest or questions, you can visit us at gofishdigital.com, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.